everyone. Welcome back to the What Should You Do podcast. I'm Ellie, your host. We have Alex here, the co-host, and a really exciting guest to have on. We have Steven, who is the founder and CEO of Renard Global and a longtime leader in corporate security, crisis response, and cyber resilience. So he spent over 16 years running global protection and crisis programs at Sony Pictures, with experience spanning more than 50 countries. He also served in law enforcement and the U.S. Army, and now advises governments and other organizations all around the world on how to prepare for and respond to high-risk situations. So, Stephen, it's so great to have you on the podcast. I'm really excited to learn more about you, your background, and definitely interested in your time at Sony too. So welcome to the podcast.
Thanks very much. This will be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess, you've done so much over the span of your career. So I'm kind of interested to kind of just have a walkthrough of where you started and kind of where you're at now.
I'll take the entire time we have set aside.
Okay, the Spark Notes version.
I'll do my best. So I was actually born in Seattle, moved to California, 12 years old, moved to London. And I grew up in London in the 60s during the Beatles and all that. Came back to the U.S., joined the Army, ended up in Vietnam, came back, got into municipal police for 12 years, got my criminal justice degree and psychology as well. Then I went in the private sector. In the early days, I was the chief of security for what is now Tyson Foods, which is the world's largest fresh meats processing company. But at the time I went in, it was a different company, and it was owned by Occidental Petroleum. So I did 7 years there, including 3 years running global human resources, which was amazing. And then I went to a company called US Robotics and 3Com, and they actually invented the modem. So at the time, AOL was buying 90% of all the product, and great history there. The founder is still a friend. And then as that business started to decline, I got a call, and it was right after 9/11, and it was Sony Pictures Entertainment in LA, and they wanted to ramp up their program. So they were looking for a global CSO that could handle analog and digital product piracy, and just build out a world-class program, which we did. We operated we operated in 50 countries. Sony operates in, God knows, 100 probably. But I didn't get into the electronics side of the business. I got into entertainment. And I did other things to help Sony in Tokyo over the years, including some pretty major incidents and things that happened. But anyway, that's it. And then 7 years ago, I started my own business after I left Sony, and I thought I was going to retire. No such thing.
No.
So I do, as you said, I do consulting for State Department, FBI. I teach quite often at academia, different campuses around the country and overseas. I've got half a dozen clients that I do work with. So that's me. I'll stop there.
No, that's super cool. How many countries then have you gotten to live in? Have you gotten to live in a bunch of different countries, or did you mostly stay in the States?
I lived in Vietnam for a year. I lived in London for almost 7 years. So yeah, in total over 8 years of my life overseas. And I've done business in well over 50 countries around the world. So a lot of international experience, which really helped me, I think, not be the ugly American overseas.
Yes, that's always the stereotype. That's what we also at Vigilant try to help our users avoid, is going overseas and not knowing anything about the situations that you're walking into and the culture and all those other things that go along with that. But that's really interesting. So the main thing that I'm so interested in, someone was talking to me yesterday about Sony being hacked. I think they tried to hack. I don't know if it was successful, but I would actually like to hear from you, because I believe you were there whenever North Korea did try to hack Sony after the interview came out, which was a very funny movie, I will say. I did see it in theaters.
Well, you might think it's funny. I know somebody who didn't think it was funny.
Very true. Depends, where you lie on that.
So I joined them in 2002 and began building out programs. And the hack, if we call it that, actually occurred in 2000. It was Thanksgiving week in November 2014. By then, my remit, and I think it's important to say this, is that I had anything that required any type of protection anywhere in the world. So it was people, content, information security, brick and mortar, physical security, and also medical services, investigation, production safety, production security, and I had my own. I was the CISO function as well, so I had a whole team of people that did that. I had forensic labs in London, Hong Kong, and LA, and I had a business continuity program there that had brought together, really important, all of the other functional areas, right? So legal, HR, communications, finance, and so on. And we would come together and because we had a lot of issues to deal with around the world. We had kidnappings, robberies, assaults, you name it. And so we would often gather in our crisis center and deal with crises, right? Cyber wasn't so much of an issue for us. We had a pretty good program. We had a good team. But the movie, The Interview, I think we greenlit that production in probably late 2012. So it was James Franco and Seth Rogen that wanted to do the program or the product. And so we did that with them in producing it. And it took, I think, about a year to get it ready, and so in the spring of 2014, the President of the United States and the UN Director both received letters from the DPRK, the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea, and what it said was that we were making this movie, and that North Korea would consider it an act of war if the film were released.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, whatever that means. There's different ways to have conflict. So we went ahead and with our plans to release the film on Christmas Eve. That was the plan. And on November 24th, which was a Monday, of course, it was a holiday week, which is when bad guys like to do stuff because why? The availability of decision makers is more limited. So, but they were in for a while, and we didn't know they were in our networks.
Oh, wow.
And somebody said, well, why didn't you see the activity, the dynamic increase in activity on their logs? And part of the reason is we move a lot of data. I mean, we're a company that produces digital product, and we're constantly moving it, right? So it's not as easy to say, well, what's your footprint today? Oh, the logs are different, which everybody should pay attention to is what's normal on your logs and what isn't. And when you hit what isn't, do something about it. Look into it. And we also partnered with Sony in the monitoring of our logs. And so anyway, we didn't know they were in. And what happened was that morning, 7 a.m., I'm in the office. Somebody comes in. They took a camera shot of their screen when they turned the computer on. And it was the Red Devil, Guardians of Peace. And you couldn't do any more with it. It was very similar to what ransomware does. It freezes your access, if you will. But what was different, and we didn't realize it immediately, is that when you connected to the network, that began the meltdown of all your data on the hard drives. So whether it was a desktop unit, laptop unit, whatever it was, you turn it on and you connect, say goodbye to your data. So when we realized that, a lot of people weren't in the office, but keep in mind, we're in 50 countries too. So this is already happening in other parts of the world.
No.
So we had to, I won't go into the detail, there's a lot, but we had to figure out a way to notify people not to turn their computer on. And if they had it on, turn it off. That's 12,000, 14,000 computers and people all over the world doing productions and doing God knows what. But that's what we did. And because we did that, we salvaged a lot of what would have been lost. Made a huge difference. But getting the word out, so if you think about how critical mass communications are, right? And I'll give you an example. I don't want to get into it, but for example, I was watching the news about what happened at Brown University. They're interviewing some of the students. They said, nobody told us there was a shooting or, hide in place or whatever. And that program, I think that they had for notification was an opt-in program, not opt-out, meaning it was voluntary. And a lot of people say, I don't need that. I don't want them spying on me. Well, okay, our programs were opt-in as well. They're not anymore. If you have a company-issued device, it is going to be in the database, and we're going to be able to get in touch with you. And if you have, maybe you got a personal phone. You want us to include that? We did. So we radically changed how all that worked. But back in the day, it was, let's be nice. And so that's how we did it. So you wanted to talk about day one decisions and how critical they are, actually moment by moment, day one decisions. I think the decisions we made on day one, in large part, salvaged the company.
Oh, wow.
So I will talk a little bit about that. When someone has a problem and they think they may have been compromised, you should already have in place a team of people that are capable of analyzing what's going on and determining, that, but also determining impact. And that has to be continuous, right? Because things change. What you think may have happened, you're going to learn readily that something else did. It's all bad, but it may be different than you think it is. So, with us, we kind of suspected who it was. And the Red Devil, Guardians of Peace, they had, I think, 7 URL links that you could go to. Like with ransomware, you've got to find a way to connect with the bad guys to figure out how you're going to get your data back, how you're going to negotiate, buy time, all that stuff. Here, none of those links worked. So there wasn't anywhere to go with it.
Yeah.
Except stop the bleeding. So I'll share a couple things then. One was, if you think it's an adversary like we thought it was, a nation state, you're up against a tidal wave. And how you manage that versus some kid operating in his mom and dad's basement in wherever, some place that, we don't have an extradition treaty with.
Yeah.
That's different. But because we thought we knew who it was, we didn't really know what their real objective was. We figured it out pretty quick. It wasn't really that they wanted ransomware or us to pay money. It was they wanted to destroy and embarrass the company. And they did not want the film to be released. That was their objective, period. So they had already embarked on this journey of destruction because it was a wiper malware, right? It was bad. And come to find out later, they took 5 of our unreleased films. They took the script for one of the Bond movies. They got access to all of the email with attachments to our top 10 executives going back over 10 years. And they began to post that on Pastebin. Not good, because you can't really trace the source and you can't do anything about it. So anyway, back to day one decisions. Because we thought that's what was going on, we started reaching out to key people, key decision makers. Guess what? Some of them were on the road, not available. So you have to have a plan B, right? So if for example, the CIO knows how to take down your network, unplug, if you will, worldwide, but nobody else does, that's a problem, right? And then let's fast forward there a little bit. Once we decided we needed to do that, who does it? Who makes that decision? Yeah. Who approves that? And even if it wasn't an adversary, let's say it was an IT glitch, the damage you've done is going to take a long time to repair because you have to go back and validate and verify that everything is the way it was, right? So that's rough. But anyway, that was one of our recommendations, and we struggled with that for a little bit, but not long. We went ahead and unplugged worldwide. And guess what? Wow. We operated our business in the dark for over 3 months, as if you had no connectivity, no internet, no computer, pen and paper. You run a business that does whatever it was, $12-14 billion a year. Just that part, that division of Sony. I mean, Sony in total was doing, I don't know, $60 billion a year then. Anyway, but now what you have also is the word starts to get out that this is going on.
Yeah.
And all of the other divisions of Sony are like, okay, you were just connected to us. Are they on our networks, right? Then I started getting calls from the other film production companies like, Warner Brothers, Disney, Paramount, blah, 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 and more, and wanting to know what's going on and asking, are we at risk? So the kinetic effect, if you will, the trickle-down effect is pretty serious pretty quick. So you're trying to deal with all that and make critical decisions. So one of them that we did is going dark, right? And then you got to do a timeout and say, well, whoa, what does that mean, right? Because if I'm a data entry clerk and I just sit there all day at the keyboard, I have no keyboard. Now what do you want me to do? Here's a notebook, here's a pen, right? And this is how we're going to do it, because you still have to track your business. So I want to say something important here. There's dealing with the crisis, fine, you do what you do. But in addition to that, the continuity of the business is critical. You got to keep your business running somehow. And you can't have everybody in the crisis room trying to deal with the crisis and at the same time turning their chair on the cell phone trying to run the business. It just doesn't work well. So your leadership that make decisions around running your business, continuity of business, should be allowed to do that. And you feed them what they need to know, but your team comes together and they start attacking the problem. I think it's really important. So what's another decision we made? Over many years, for various reasons, I had established good relationships with the FBI. The assistant director in LA was a friend and someone I trusted. And so my recommendation was that we bring the Bureau in. I had a great team of people, by the way. I mean, I had CISO function and all the teams around the world, the labs. I had investigations, some really great investigators, and they're all very capable, but not necessarily capable of taking on a behemoth like we were up against.
Yeah. So
it's just too much. And there's all this uncertainty yet. So my recommendation was that we bring the Bureau. And the reason, we're in 2014, the reason I thought the Bureau is the LEGAT program, the Legal Attaché program. At that time, I think they had about 75 LEGATs operating in consulates and embassies around the world. And so they didn't really have any more rights than we did, right? They're in a foreign country.
Yeah.
But they had relationships. They had trust. And they could open doors we could never open. And they did. So I had to get, this is a decision I would recommend your viewers do now, not wait till the crisis. And that is, what are the triggers around calling in law enforcement, getting their help, and who are you going to call from law enforcement? So again, at the time, the Bureau was best suited to help us, and both from a cybercrime standpoint, but also a global impact standpoint. So I got permission to do that. Why did I need permission? The issue of legal privilege. That's what you got to decide on now, right? Are you going to bring them in or not? And if you think you can do this on your own, when you're up against somebody like we were, I'm sorry, but you're sadly mistaken. Anyway, by that afternoon, I had 6 cyber agents in my office. One of them was a South Korean individual who had been to South Korea and helped them when Dark Seoul happened, when the North attacked the South, the ATMs and the banks, and he was there. And within a day, he looked at some of the malware. He said, that's the same malware they used. It had the footprint of who was actually doing this to us. So unbelievably helpful. But and keep in mind, it's Thanksgiving week, then it's Christmas, then it's New Year's, right? Anyway, people worked nonstop on this. It was the biggest story in the world for probably a month. And
I remember seeing it in the news even.
Oh, well, there's more to it. So I'll share a little bit more. Anyway, we partnered really well. And one of the things you worry about when you bring in law enforcement is maybe the issue of confidentiality. There's some things you can talk about. I mean, they can talk about, and some things they can't, because they're under the umbrella of the DOJ, right? Department of Justice. I get that. I don't care. You do what you need to do, and we'll help you. You're here to help. And they did. And then we let the word get out that we had brought in the Bureau to help. I think that made a huge difference, because the amount of data that our adversary claimed that they got, if it was true, they only released a portion of it, not all of it by any means. But it kind of put the brakes on from a standpoint of damage control, because I think they had more plans in place that were going to be bad for us. Anyway, that happened. And then we started bringing in third parties that could help us as well. And all of a sudden, you got 4 people sitting in an office that was built for 1. And a couple of my guys actually brought cots in, and they worked 20 hours a day and slept a couple times a day, took a nap. That's how bad it was. And then you got to figure out how to feed the army, right? So it was Thanksgiving week again. But all these things you have to do. And then how do you communicate? How did we communicate? We established our crisis business continuity team day one. We had a place for that. And we had backup communications and lots of ports to plug into, and except that we weren't plugging in computers at that time. And then the other thing we worried about, because it was a cyber attack, is that we may have had our analog phones compromised.
Oh, yeah.
And half of our phone system was analog, right? And so, and then we felt like sometimes the media knew more than they should have. Some of it might have been speculation or whatever, but you want to try to control that. And so we looked for alternate means. The other thing is, okay, that many people worldwide running the business, responding to all this, helping us, no email. How do you communicate? SMS, that's not the best. But we did use, and what we did also is we were actually getting rid of our BlackBerries, so we had boxes of BlackBerries. BlackBerries use their own network, right? So they're more likely to be secure. And so we handed those out to key decision makers, and they began to find a way to communicate, not through our network, but that way. So that was great. Let me stop there a moment and ask.
No, you're good.
Because I could talk about this all day.
No, I think it. Go ahead, Alex.
I have a question because I find this fascinating.
Same.
How this is an unprecedented event and likely an unprecedented situation for Sony. How much preparation and planning was done on the front end that something like this could happen? And so when these decisions are being made, are these decisions that you're falling back on, standard operating procedures, or these are things that you are just deciding in real time? And it's probably a hybrid, but I would like to know the amount that was pre-planned.
No, I'm glad you asked it. We did. We had a crisis team. We had designated individuals, decision makers from the functional areas of the business. So it wasn't, their first day. However, I'll be honest, who plans for something like this to happen?
Yeah.
You don't think that way. Maybe you should. When you talk about worst case scenario, we were damn near. So
a nation state,
or you could also say
company.
Yeah.
Is the highest almost.
Like the Maersk attacks on the shipping fleet that froze all their vessels in the water all over the world. That was what they called a near extinction event. So was ours. And when you think about victims, everybody who was doing business with us, our customers, our employee base, those that were in support services, they're all victims. And when you know who the adversary is and this is your livelihood, and all of a sudden everything changes, you don't know if you're going to have a job tomorrow. So the answer to your question is we did a pretty good job, thankfully. We were able to make tough decisions early on that made a huge difference. However, we didn't anticipate something like this. And you remember I mentioned the letters to POTUS and the DPRK. I'm just speaking for myself. I knew about that, but it's like, oh yeah, whatever. You got to pay attention to what's going on with your adversaries or potential adversaries. And then you got to assess what is it they might do? What are their capabilities? And, this was, I don't want to give them too much credit, but they did a pretty good job with what they did. It had a chilling effect. However, I will say two things I wanted to mention that happened. So this was the 24th of November. By December 19th, POTUS and Director Comey made public attribution to North Korea for doing this. And we never did say that. That wasn't our job. Our job was to fix the problem, keep the business going, keep the ship afloat. But the fact that we brought the Bureau in, that led to that. That gave huge credibility to us because there's all kinds of speculation. Well, it must have been an insider and blah, blah, blah. How could they do this? Let me just say, how could they do this? In the end, it was a phishing attack. Phishing is how they got into the networks. And it wasn't just one individual that clicked on a link. It was more than one. So then start to think about the role of communications. Communications internally, communications externally. And I'm talking about crisis communications to your customer base, communications to the world, to the media. You are going to be overwhelmed with what happens just with the media. And then at some point you're going to realize, wait a minute, I have a business to run too. So how you manage all that, you're going to need help. You're going to need help from people that know how to do this, right? Most companies don't have a true team of communications professionals that know what to do in a crisis. And in a crisis, you want to stay, if you can, one step ahead, not always lagging behind. You also want to be as open and forthright as you possibly can without compromising the business or the investigation. Really important. So what's going on just in the communications function is a big, big deal. Human resources. What is the messaging to the employees? Oh, don't worry about it. You're going to have a job tomorrow. Are you? I don't know. I can't say that. Not my place. But you do need to give assurance. So one of the things we did too, the FBI has the victims. What is the unit that they have where they have a whole team of people that are trained to deal with victims?
Oh, yeah, their victim specialist unit.
Yeah. So we brought them in. We set up one of our sound stages with about 500, 600 seats in it, and we did 8 sessions in one day. for everybody that was in some way affected. And they said, and so I spoke, but they did too. And the goal was for them to say, you are victims. Here's what that means. Here's what your rights are. Here's what you should be doing. And then we established a hotline as well for communications and a bunch of other things. But that was really important because you need your team to help you. And take the speculation out of it, right? You need everybody to win. So that was a big deal. The other one is that you better expect there will be a day of reckoning. The day of reckoning is, how did it happen? When did it happen? What did you do about it? What were all the decisions that were made and not made, and why? And I had one of my guys become a scribe, and his job was to log everything that we did. And we did it
really smart.
under attorney-client privilege. So at the end of each day, and it was on a piece of paper, right, legal pads, he would hand those to the chief counsel, who was the head of litigation, who was in the room with us, and we never saw him again, the paper. But it was used to deal with the government. It was used to deal with the parent company. It was used to deal with insurance claims and indemnity and recovery and all kinds of things, because everybody wants to take a look at what did you do and how did you do it and why didn't you do this. And you know what? I won't give you the number, but I'll just say in the end, we were able to recover a significant amount of money through our insurance carriers. And on that note, in the planning for your audience, if you will, one of the days that you're in the room planning these tough decisions, who's going to unplug, how do you make the decision, who's authorized to call law enforcement, blah, blah, blah. There are some other decisions I think that are really critical. One of them is insurance. So one day somebody should carry in, like your risk management department, every insurance policy that you have that relates to loss or risk or cyber, and redline. Okay, we have professional liability, general liability, cyber insurance, blah, blah, blah. What do they say? What is it that we are indemnified for? And what is it that we are supposed to do to be sure that we're indemnified for it? So, the insurance carrier will cover you if you've done what you said you would do. So who owns that? Who audits that? Pay a lot more attention to that. Really, really important. Because as I said, there is a day of reckoning. So next question.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think sometimes we'll have people that will be listening to this and, Sony's a billion-dollar company, multi-billion-dollar company. But this also goes for smaller companies as well. You don't have to be even $1 million company to have something like this occurred. And it might not be something as big as a nation-state actor in North Korea just hacks all your systems, but it could be someone in their mom's basement that's very good at what they do, and they take hundreds of thousands of dollars from your business, and that could have detrimental effects to whether you make it into next year as a company or not. And I had a business owner that I'm close with, actually, and they called me a month ago and said, I just woke up to over $150,000 drained out of our business account, and I don't know what to do right now. Like, who do I even call? And that's a whole, then going through, okay, that did happen and that's really bad, but we also need to ensure that you stop the bleed, because if they just drain $150,000 out of your bank account, they're in your systems, and you need to make sure that you protect that and not just report it and start going through those critical steps, because to your point, what you do in those very early stages can dictate the outcome for your business at the end of the day. And so obviously, I'm sure you're also tracking, go to ic3.gov to report it at the federal level, and contact your local police department. Look at cybersecurity companies within your area that can come in and actually look at your systems and give you an understanding of what's compromised and how to fix it if you're not a cybersecurity professional. Because just saying, okay, well, I changed my passwords and that should be good to go is really not enough. And so maybe for those smaller businesses listening, what would you recommend them to do as soon as they identify something like this occurring?
I'll respond to that, but let me also say that the only way you're going to win, I think, is if you have a business and you have employees and you have partners, that everybody has good cyber hygiene, right?
Yes.
Because it only takes the weakest link and you're in trouble. As hard as you try and as much money as you spend, it's really easy if somebody wants to compromise you. So I think that's really important. And that is anti-phishing training and awareness programs, VPN, multi-factor authentication, it shouldn't be optional. This is the way you're going to run. You want to be online either for your grandparents or your kids or your business, your employee base. If you want to be online, there's a price to pay. And there's a way to do it relatively safely and not. So I think that's important. Small businesses, I've had phone calls to, I'm under ransomware attack, and what do? I've had them from the general counsels, the CEOs, and I'm like, okay, do you have a plan, a crisis plan? No. What are you doing? Well, I got one of my guys and he's looking into it. Okay. And what do you think will be your ability to preserve evidence? Are you just in there whatever? Because again, there may be a day of reckoning, and sometimes you have the ability to go after the adversary. At the time, mostly you're thinking about salvaging your business, right? Keeping it going. But the key really has got to be sitting down and having a plan ahead of time. And I did a program, I worked with a large tech company for a year because they wanted to become certified to do business with DoD. And we built a good program. We had a plan. We were going to test the plan. And the CEO said to me, okay, we'll do a plan, a tabletop. And he said, I think we're pretty good shape. And he said, a lot of my people have never been in a crisis. He said, so I want to go softly. I don't want to scare anybody or embarrass anybody or anything like that. So he said, the scenario should be, not too bad. And I said, then let's don't do it. Because the goal here is that people learn under a little pressure how to deal with a crisis. And guess what? There's no soft pedaling in a real crisis. It's a crisis. So I said, here's what I will tell you is let's try it, and we'll give the assurance or reassurance to everyone in the room that we're not going to let anybody go down a rabbit hole. This is not to embarrass anybody. This is to turn lights on and learn. And that's what I do. I teach the MBA program at USC. I did Pepperdine a couple weeks ago. I've done Northwestern and so on. And that's what I say to them when we kind of break it out and get into the meat and potatoes of it. Don't worry about it, right? This is how you learn, or you wait until there's a crisis and then you learn.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important as well. And I think back to small business again. Have somebody come in, take a day here, a day there, have the conversation, determine where you are. And here's what I'd say about that. One of the reasons that companies don't do that is they already know where they are. And they're not like, oh God, I don't want somebody else to come in and look at my dirty laundry. That's okay. Time out. Take a look at where you are. Everybody's somewhere. That's okay. The goal is continuous improvement. The goal is I'm going to make it better. And, like I said, creating a partnership among your employees, your customers, having these conversations, auditing, vetting, training, really important. Don't make it optional.
For companies who say, or small businesses who say, we're too small to be targeted, we don't have anything worth stealing, I could be an auto repair shop, or I could be a mom and pop shop. What would your response to that be? And what could they?
I had this conversation last month. I love it. So here's what I say, because a lot of people think that way, right? Are you connected to the internet through your business? Yes. Then you're at risk from every corner of the world. I don't care if you're mom and pop or an auto repair shop or whatever. It doesn't matter. And by the way, when some of the adversaries, you know what they do? They surf the web. They scan. They look for legacy systems that have not been patched, as an example. Oh my God, that's not a good deal. But now they just found a key to the door, and they're in. They don't care if it's mom and pop. I mean, yeah, you want somebody who's big enough that they've got some money in the bank, but you know what? A little bit isn't bad either. And if you're the kid in the parents' basement having fun with this, you don't care, right?
That's very true.
Yeah, and what types of things do you think that would be valuable? Like, you immediately think of, I can go after somebody's accounts, but for these, auto repair shops, like, oh, my inventory is in a garage. Well, there's other things of value. Can you?
How about banking?
Yep, banking, employee information, things like that.
Yeah, PII. I mean, that's another one that really bothers me, is that we all pretty well know what is proprietary information, what's sensitive, what it is what PII is, and what we're required to do in protecting that. But it's an ongoing issue, because the dynamics of that change every day. So somebody has to have ownership and accountability for it. But the other part of it is, encryption. Don't make it easy for the bad guy to, once he's in, to just swim around and find whatever they want. I mean, I'll give you an example with us, and there's a different reason why it happened, but 48,000 Social Security numbers were hacked. That's a big deal. That's PII, right? That's Cary Grant and, people that are deceased but still have rights to, royalties and whatever. So anyway, I think that's really important. But somebody has to own this. Somebody has to pay attention to it. And that's where I think we see breakdowns a lot of times. If you have an IT, a lot of small companies have third-party IT companies that support them. Bring them in, have the conversation, have somebody like me there, or you guys, that sits down in the room together and challenges them in a positive way. But what about this? And what about that? Tell me about your team. Have you had to respond to other incidents? What kind of vulnerabilities were in place or occurred? What do you do with law enforcement? Do you have others that you can bring in the event that your team is overwhelmed? I mean, these are all very valid conversations and really important. So I'll give you another one. As big as we were, and here we are dark, we never missed payroll worldwide.
Oh, wow.
That's a big deal, right? I mean, when you start missing payroll, a lot of people live paycheck to paycheck. That's a serious problem.
Absolutely. And then for some of these companies that maybe haven't thought of this but are listening to this podcast now and you're like, oh, wow, I really should bring someone in to do an audit, or I should bring someone in with IT specialties, whether it be through a third-party organization or bring someone in-house. Where do they start to kind of seek out someone that can support them, or a third-party company that can support them with this?
There's a volunteer group here in LA called Secure the Village, and I'm a part of that. And we actually exist to help smaller businesses, especially, do exactly what we're talking about. Where are you? And there's actually, on the link on the website, there are assessment tools. There are ways you can kind of self-audit and see where you are. The other one I really like is CISA, C-I-S-A, in the federal government. They've got all kinds of tools that are available there. And I'll give you another one. Back when this happened to us, I wouldn't say that it would have been a very good path to take, but now it is. And that is your insurance company. So if you have cyber insurance, have a conversation with them. So if we have an attack and we call you, what are your capabilities? You may not have to go any further than that, because they don't want you to pay a bunch of money, because guess what? Some of it's coming out of their pocket. And so a lot of the insurance carriers now have cyber teams that are really good at finding out who the adversary is, negotiating the fees, if you will, buying time, getting data back, analyzing who are these bad guys, where are they, what do we do about it? So you're not alone on this. There are places to go, but you got to teach yourself to fish a little bit too. And the SANS Institute, they do a lot of great training programs on things like this. Get some of your IT folks more involved and more current on what's going on out there. And there are tons of, go on LinkedIn. There's plenty of seminars and webinars and podcasts that can help people on this continuous improvement path.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I think it was so informative and definitely a topic that a lot of people should know, but maybe aren't as familiar with as they should be. So I think there's a lot of great resources here, a lot of great information, and I'm going to drop some of those organizations that you mentioned in the description for everyone to kind of have to refer to and leverage in the event that it's something that fits their needs. But thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for the invitation. Good conversation, and best wishes. Happy holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.